Good evening, everyone, and welcome to New York to Dharma for the third time. The subject this evening is the third noble truth, cessation. We're working on volume 1 of 3 of The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chögyam Trungpa. These are talks that he gave over 13 years, period of 13 years. He would take his students away for 3 months at a time in what we call seminary, Vajradhatu Seminary. And it was divided into 3 parts, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. These talks are from the Hinayana section, and Judith Leaf took all the transcripts and digested them into a volume for publication. The Four Noble Truths, there are 4, were the first teachings that the Buddha gave after his parinirvana. The story goes that he felt, after he had achieved enlightenment, that he couldn't communicate what he had experienced and learned to anyone else, that it was just beyond communication, beyond words. But he ran into some fellow practitioners, people that he'd practiced austerities and different kinds of yoga with. And at first they thought that he had fallen from the path, fallen off the path, because he wasn't practicing austerities anymore. He looked, healthy, because they were doing things like mortifying the flesh. And then they realized that something had changed, and they asked him for teachings. And he gave them teachings. He gave them this teaching of the Four Noble Truths, or Aryan Truths, they're called. And he gave these teachings in a place called the Deer Park. There's a park in Sarnath, which is outside of modern Varanasi. You can still go there today. And you can see a big, huge stupa. You can circumambulate it. It's built to honor the Buddha. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering. We all suffer. And in particular, what we're talking about here is the psychological suffering. There are 3 kinds of suffering. There is the suffering of life. It's a fact. You get stabbed in the leg, you get old, your body falls apart whenever you have all these kinds of things, and it's painful in itself, regardless of what your state of mind might be. It's painful to be ill. It's painful to have something fall on your toe. But that's not the kind of pain the Buddha was talking about. What he was talking about was the more psychological pain, having to do with always wanting things to be different. This is the pain that animates all thought. All thought, as it occurs in our minds, is about the past and the future. And it's about what we want to avoid and what we want to cultivate and acquire. And so it's driven by a sense of anxiety, the anxiety or the fear that we won't get what we want, or that we will get what we don't want. And that is the basic suffering that the Buddha was speaking of. He called it dukkha, which means suffering in Sanskrit. The second noble truth is about the origin of suffering. And this is a little more complex, but it really has to do with cessation, the third noble truth. And that is that the origin of suffering is that in the middle of all of this space in which we inhabit all the time, we are constantly in a spatial environment in which phenomena are arising and passing away. Those phenomena are known as the 6 knowables, objects of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. So here in this space that we're in the middle of this room, all of these things are arising and passing away in the present moment. Now, you may say, well, that table over there endures. But that's just an idea. In terms of your experience, what you experience now, which is the only time we ever experience anything, that, now I'm seeing the table and now I'm not. There it is, there it isn't. Everything arises and passes away, these sounds, these words. Now that I mention it, the feeling of your bottom on the cushion or chair that you're sitting on becomes present in your consciousness, and then it passes away as your attention shifts to something else. The second noble truth says that in the middle of all this space, there is no figure and ground until there is. And suddenly what happens is that almost magically, an object emerges from the space, which is just full of flashing lights, colors, sounds, smells, tastes, but something emerges as being of importance, more importance, captures your mind. You say, oh, I know that person. I want to get to know that person. Oh, I smell something, you know. And suddenly, there is a figure and a ground. The figure is what's important, and the ground recedes into emptiness, into nothing. It just recedes into unimportance, relative unimportance. Because what we're focusing on is the figure. And that figure implies the perceiver of the figure, which is me. So if that's there, then I'm here. And from that basic duality, we're not going to go into it, a whole complicated structure of the self arises. And this is described in the Buddhist teachings in terms of the 5 skandhas, which are described differently in each school of Buddhist thought philosophy. The third noble truth is that there can be a cessation to suffering. And the fourth noble truth is the path, the way we approach and then arrive at the cessation of suffering. The cessation of suffering is called Nirodha in Sanskrit, Gokpa in Tibetan. And it means absence. Absence of what? Absence of suffering. Ultimately, it might mean absence of anything. But really what it means fundamentally is to stop or prevent. Prevent what? Prevent suffering. Trungpa Rinpoche says it has the quality of vaccination. Once we experience Nirodha, the cessation, we're vaccinated against suffering. Not that it won't happen again, but that we know how to deal with it. And the main thing is this, that the way in which we achieve cessation, Nirodha, Gokpa, is by coming present in our meditation. We're thinking, we're thinking, we're thinking, and then suddenly we realize I'm thinking, and we're present. Every time one does that, you achieve cessation of the suffering. And in fact, it can be quite pleasant to abide, if one can, in this open space of the cessation of the suffering of thought. When you cut the thoughts, you're also cutting the karmic chain. See, karma binds us in this way. What karma fundamentally is a story. This story has a structure. One description of its structure is 12 nidanas, but we're not going to go into them now. Another is the structure of the kind of stories you see on television or in the movies or read in a book, where you are the hero or the heroine, and you're on a journey towards some object of desire or away from some object of fear and repulsion. But you're on a journey, it's a dramatic arc. And what makes these stories interesting is we identify with the hero or the heroine, and we wonder, will they escape the evil? Will they achieve, the ambition or, acquire what it is they wish to acquire? And it becomes a drama. Karma is basically all of these stories that we tell ourselves. To the extent that we believe them, we are bound into them. We are enslaved to them. They can be all kinds of stories. Stories about my failings, stories about my virtues, stories about the promise that Christmas is going to come, and what will I get? The promise that I'm getting old and I'm going to die and I'm afraid of it. All kinds of stories that we tell ourselves. And when we tell these stories, these dramatic stories, we find ourselves bound into action. That person hurt me. How am I going to get even? Or how am I going to solve this situation with them? And suddenly, we have selected out of the vast panoply of our experience this one event, and we've said, this is significant, and I'm going to devote time to this. I'm going to set off on a course of action to cure it. And this is a story that we tell ourselves. We tell them to ourselves as we sit, as we live our lives in fragments. When you see a movie, they've sort of purified and coalesced the whole thing into a coherent, long story. But we experience it in fragments, a little of this now, a little more later, and a repeat here and a repeat there, and then we repeat them over and over again. And they arise habitually in our minds. The purpose of these stories is to basically prove that I am here. If it's a story of fear, the purpose of fear is to prove that I am here. If it's a story of pleasure, again, the same thing. These stories are a form of entertainment. Entertainment for the sense of I, for ego, which is just a myth. It doesn't actually exist. But the stories keep it alive. Without the stories, I goes nowhere. I stops. As soon as you come present, I evaporates. And then you think, hey, I'm present, and I is back. It's very subtle. So, the idea of cessation is that through meditation practice, shamatha from the beginning, you are not participating in the samsaric world. You're stepping away from it. You're coming present into the world of nirvana. Now we're talking about the hinayana stage of the path. At the mahayana stage, they don't talk about cessation, nirvana. It gets a little more subtle and transcendent there. But this is still very, very profound. This is the hinayana practitioner at the beginning stage of the path. When they really accomplish this, they have achieved freedom from suffering, more or less. Not quite all, but hugely. And it's permanent at the end of this path. So you're boycotting neurosis. You are resting when you practice this way in prajna. Now prajna means superlative knowing. Jnana is the root to know, prize, and intensifier. And usually, the Mahayana stage of the path, it refers to transcendent knowledge, knowledge which cuts through I and other. But at this stage of the path, it's knowledge which just cuts through I and sees this world clearly. Every time we come present, you can do it now as we sit here, the world is much clearer and simpler because it's just this, just what's presenting itself to us. That is the prajna of the hinayana stage of the path. And so we come back to that over and over again, that simple, clear knowing in the present moment. We say, if a thought arises, like I'm doing it, you just see it and you let it go. And then hear this one. He says that experientially, as you're doing this kind of practice, sitting on your cushion, and then you can also extend the practice into daily life. And we'll actually do a little practice here together in a few minutes. That experientially, cessation means that thoughts become transparent. Now, often when we sit, all of a sudden we find that we're thinking. We beat ourselves up. We say, "Oh, I'm a bad meditator. I wish I could have my meditation without thoughts." If you see those thoughts and don't do anything with them, it's like having compassion for yourself, that you're not beating yourself up. They become transparent, translucent. They lose their hold. And although they arise, and they will arise, because they're just like the waves in the ocean, they are the thoughts of our mind, they will not disturb you. The whole trick is to not have a battle going on, the battle between me and my thoughts, but to just see them arising and passing away. And then they become what he calls transparent or translucent. Thoughts are no longer a big hassle in sitting practice. Cessation occurs when there is no implication behind such thoughts. They are just ripples in the pond. And you can sit here and watch your thoughts go by like ripples in the pond. If anybody wants to interject, please raise your hand. So there are 12 aspects of cessation. Now, what he did, Trungpa Rinpoche, when he taught seminary, he often, and most often, used a text called the Treasury of Knowledge by actually the previous incarnation of his teacher. His teacher was named Jamgon Kongtrul of Cessation, and the previous incarnation was Jamgon Kongtrul the Great, Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Taye, he was called, or Jamgon Kongtrul the Great. And he wrote this book, The Treasury of Knowledge. And Trungpa Rinpoche would make little notes from it. Then he would go in and give his lectures. He did this year after year. His teacher, Jamgon Kongtrul of Cessation, was one of 5 reincarnations of Jamgon Kongtrul the Great. So he was cribbing from that, and he talked about the 12 aspects of cessation. I'm just going to go through them. The first is what's called nature. The origin of cessation is meditative absorption. That means whenever you practice, whenever you clear your mind and come present and aware, that is cessation, again and again. Now, to the extent that you battle to get that, it will be very short and thoughts will crowd in on it. But to the extent that you begin to regard thoughts as being translucent, transparent, meaning they have no real significance, no importance, that it's okay for them to come and go, then those moments of clarity become more frequent and longer. What should be given up? This is all in the nature. First we have the origin, meditative absorption. What should be given up? What is given up is the commitment you make to the kleshas. Kleshas are the defilements. They're the emotional defilements. And they're made up of 2 things, energy and story. So, Samsara Khyentse Rinpoche, I was reading him one time, and he said, if you want to identify your ego, really experience it, see it clearly, just think of someone who's wronged you. You know? And then what do you feel like that? They said it was not fair. It was what they did to me, and I'm going to get even, and they're just an erotic person. And you tell yourself this whole story. This is a klesha, the klesha of hatred, of wanting revenge, of anger. And so, when you practice meditation and cessation, you are giving up loyalty to the kleshas. I mean, think about it. If you have a particular thing that's eating at you right now, if you think about some person that you remember who did something really nasty to you, and you're going to get, how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to get even? Or how are you going to escape it? Or what? And you can feel it sort of roil you up, whatever it might be. Or a fear about, I'm not going to be able to pay the rent. I'm not going to be alone. I'm going to be lonely. Whatever it is, fear for your health. And as soon as that fear arises, you are lost in it. And really what it amounts to is coming back, cutting the story. And when you cut the story, the emotion, the feeling, the energy loses its force. Maybe not immediately, but rather quickly. Because the story is necessary to keep it alive. And you begin, and you can actually meditate on the emotions and come back into the present with them. You can see the energy in your body and turn that into your object of meditation. And this is a huge virtue, to be able to do that. Yes? David, get the mic behind you.
Oh,
No, it's for the recording too, so that people watching this can hear you. We actually have people who watch these.
so this week, a couple of times, I remember similar type of lecture that you did before, and obviously something Isabel said to me previously in the closures and the thoughts. And this week I was looking along and I was thinking about past experience I had, and had someone had wronged me, and I was like walking up through where I live to the subway, and I was like, screw them, really like roasting myself up, and I could feel this, like, and I was just like, enjoy that sensation, work with that, just like, and then all of a sudden, it didn't last as long as those thoughts and clashes did. I got round the bend and it just went, gone. And I was like, yeah, come on, take it.
Like any dream, as soon as you realize you're dreaming, like in the morning when you wake up, you realize, oh, I was having this dream, and then you're not. That's what it takes to realize that you're having the dream, is that you're not dreaming anymore. Same thing with these kleshas. And then you have the choice. Should you go back into it, or should you just stay present? And of course, the injunction is to stay present. So you're changing your loyalty from working with the kleshas, like and solve that. See, when you have klesha like that, an emotion, really what we want to do, we don't want it. What we want to do is get rid of it. And there are two ways to get rid of it. You can either repress it, stuff it, and you can stuff it by either sort of really pushing it down, or just going and watching a TV show, or a movie, so it takes your mind off it. And then the other way is that you act it out. You punch somebody in the nose, and cathartic your anger, or you go and exercise your lust. You go and make love to someone because you're feeling horny. And these are the problem here is that we never actually meet the emotions because we're trying to get rid of them so fast. So in meditation, we turn around and we actually see it. And the funny thing is that when you do see it, it doesn't last long until it arises again. So what we're doing is we're shifting our loyalty from acting on these emotions, either stuffing them or acting them out. And we think that's what we have to do. From that to simply resting in the present moment, coming back, giving up the dream of these petty emotions, which are so idiosyncratic, so warped. They're just one little slice of life. The third aspect of nature is what should be cultivated, which is simplicity. And it's the simplicity of simply resting in the present. It's so simple. He recommends morning and evening meditation practice. You bracket your day.
Sandwich. Sandwich, right?
Sandwich.
Yeah, your life.
Have you read the chapter?
Yeah, part of it.
Yeah, he said that sandwich. Good. That's good. Yeah, he says you can sandwich your day. And what we're sandwiching in is health. The health of coming back to this present moment and of stepping out of the dreams. He says we've overcome our inability to relate with our basic nature. And I gave that a special highlight. You see, this clarity of the present moment is what we actually truly are. It's there all the time, just waiting for us to come back to it. We don't create it. It's there. We just lose track of it when we get lost in thought or klesha. Right? This is so important because when we practice, what our practice really is coming back to this nature that is already and always there waiting for us. We're just coming back from a dream. back to this. So it's the ultimate simplicity. The second of the 12 aspects is profundity. And he says that this means that that's the same thing. That cessation is part of you, and at the same time, sort of not part of you. I mean, this world, in its clarity and simplicity that we come back to, is always here. Is it mine? Is it someone else's? It's neither. It's not a possession, and it's not, and yet it's part of, it's really what we are fundamentally. He said, so you should not feel pride in your effort that you have caused cessation of the samsaric world. It is not your cessation. It's your natural state of being. Then there's the sign. The sign that you have begun to achieve cessation is that the kleshas have begun to subside. You become more bland, ordinary, boring even. Because of your practice, you cease to play games with people, and you become a decent person, a more reasonable person. You are giving up indulgence. You become highly disciplined. You are realistic, proper, and industrious. You have self-discipline, and you project dignity and calm, a greater calm, because we're not animated by the passion of our emotions. Doesn't this make sense? I mean, it's such a beautiful presentation. Yes, Rochelle, can you hand her the mic back?
Well, I think it's because we start to see what our storyline is. And we usually have this repeat story. And then we're willing to give that up.
Well said. Thank you.
Well, I'm just repeating from Rinpoche's.
Repeating what?
Repeating from Rinpoche.
Yeah.
So you're willing to give up your storyline.
Yeah, well, we've all absorbed that and learned it to some degree. That's why we're here.
Because when these stories start to come up, after a while you begin to recognize them. They're like themes in a play. The play is about your life.
Right.
Everybody's got a different theme, a different play about their life. But after a while, you make a decision. Well, I'm cutting that scene out. I'm done with that scene.
Yeah. Usually takes a bit to get us to do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, first you have to recognize. And that's what happens when you meditate.
Indeed. The fourth aspect of cessation is called ultimate. Through prajna, we begin to realize the origin of our problems and our mistakes, which occur from ignorance. Having understood that, there is no possibility of regressing. And what ignorance means, you see, is ignoring the space of this present moment. Ignore-ance. You know? It's not that we don't know something. It's that we are literally ignoring this. The word in Sanskrit is avidya, which means not seeing. And with a particular kind of seeing, vidya is seeing transcendently. It's seeing reality. In Tibetan, it's ma rigpa, same thing. Rigpa is the faculty of mind that sees reality. Ma is a negative. And so ignorance here, when it means not seeing what? This space of this present moment with everything flashing and rising and passing away in the instant. And instead, we go off into a dream. And we become more or less, and often more, unavailable and unresponsive, or inaccurately responsive to the world. So you see the value of intellect. This is prajna again. And this intellect is not intellectual, like he says. He uses the example of Freud or Jung, Jungian or Freudian theory. This intellect is simply the clear seeing of the mind in the present moment. clear seeing of what's arising. The fifth one is incompletion. And this is all about the stages of the Hinayana path. The first stage is you are a stream winner. And you've begun to actually understand this. You've entered the stream towards Buddhahood. You're seeing things as they are, but there are still these habits of mind that keep arising and taking you away. The second stage is you're a once returner. That means you're going to come back for one more life when you die in this lifetime. And this is because of your karmic debts. You have still, you're still creating karma to some slight degree, and you also have karma from the past that you have to experience and burn up and live out. These are, what karma from the past is, are stories that have projected you into a particular situation that you have to live through. So the Buddha, for instance, his karma caused him to be born as a human being in a particular circumstance. He was enlightened at 35, but he didn't die until he was 80. He was living out his karma. He wasn't creating any new karma, but he was living out the old. And the third stage is a non-returner. That means that, yeah?
So is it a...
It goes green when you press it. Press it.
You have to hold it in.
Let it go.
Oh.
Hold it close.
So, if karma is a story, like how in this example of the Buddha, like burning up past karma, if he's not creating new karma and seeing through the story, how is that?
Because these stories have real consequences. And his story got him born as a human being with a human body. And while he wasn't going to be reborn again, because he achieved enlightenment, he still had to live out that life, because it has a forward momentum. It's kind of like you're in a job, and you decide, this job isn't doing it for me anymore, but I still need the money and I'm going to keep going. You know?
Okay.
You know, there's a forward momentum. It's like you're in a car, and you run out of gas, but the car still keeps moving. There's a forward momentum to karma.
So if you come present, your karma is still
there.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're not creating any new karma.
Right, and the way you're relating to even the past karma
Changes, and yes.
But the
Definitely
momentum
changes.
is, that's very helpful. So the momentum is.
And you're not creating new karma. So usually, say you've got you resent somebody because they did something to you. When you are thinking about that and believing in that story, you're creating all kinds of new karma. You're thinking, I'm going to do this to them, and I'm going to do that to them. And then maybe you go ahead and do it, which creates even more karma. So when you are practicing the meditative path, you just see it. And as you see it, you are burning up the karma. You're bringing awareness to it. And in the light of awareness, that past karma burns. And it burns in, they say, I actually use this, in 81 stages. You can read Thich Nhat Hanh's book on understanding your mind. And he talks about how by bringing the light of awareness to your karmic patterns, you burn them up. How do you burn them up? You see them, and you just wake up, Wake up from it. That's just like waking up in the morning from a dream. It's like you're sitting here thinking, and then you think, whoops, I was thinking, and you're not anymore. And every time you do that with intention, and come back to the present with intention, you're definitely burning up karma. You're seeing it as just a story that you're telling yourself. Now, it may be a very compelling story. And then you begin to see, gosh, that story has really got me in its grip, And that's a funny position to be in. Because you, on the one hand, know that it's only a story, and on the other hand, you know that it really has hooked you. That's a term that, who uses that term? Samsara, Zikar Kontrol Rinpoche. uses that term, hooked. You get hooked. And even you can even see that you're hooked, and you're still hooked. But as you begin to see it, it begins to let loose.
So if this is not relevant, that's okay. But so what is kind of, if you're not burning up the karma, what is the nature of karma that's enlightened? Just that momentum, or like neutral? It's the momentum and it's sort of
It's kind of like you're in a car,
or like,
and you've turned off the engine, but it's still got a ways to go before it stops.
right.
This is the hinting on the notion of karma.
Okay.
Okay? So the Buddha, you see, got enlightened. He turned off the engine, but he had 50 more years to go until everything stopped.
But he didn't.
Maybe we need new batteries.
But he didn't waste his time either.
He didn't what?
Didn't waste his time.
He certainly didn't.
He woke up when he was 35, but then he spent the rest of his life
Helping others.
helping other people.
Right. Right. And not creating karma from himself and others.
Not
But freeing them.
Not creating any negative karma.
So in completion, the third stage is non-returner, and cessation is still incomplete, but the person is partially delivered and still partially confused, but they're pretty much, they've understood the basic point of how all this works and what we're talking about, which everybody here in the room seems to understand pretty well too. And then the final stage, it says, under point 6, signs of completion, is you become an arhat. An arhat is the fully accomplished practitioner at the Hinayana stage of the path. And they've completely overcome and controlled any obstacles to the path. And it says they restrain what needs to be restrained and develop what should be developed. Your learning is completely accomplished, and you have reached a state of non-learning. This is not, for those of you who know the Mahayana path, probably I don't need to say this. There's a stage of the Mahayana path called the stage of no more learning, and this is not that. This is something else. This means that you are able, without any help, to simply abide in the present moment. And that you are, if thoughts occur, you let them occur, you let them go, you see them as transparent, translucent, of no terrific importance. Doesn't matter. And not treating them as enemies. I was thinking about the emotions. You can turn them into objects of meditation. There's one of the 100,000. Anybody here read the 100,000 songs of Milarepa? Yeah, a couple of people, 3. In it, there's one where he sings this song where he's attacked by a demoness named Seringma, and she bites his toe. He's sitting in a cave, meditating, and she comes along, she bites his toe, and she won't let go. And he tells her, you're attacking a holy yogi, you're incurring lots of bad karma, and you're impeding my progress on the path. And she says, oh, you're just trying to get rid of me. See, she's one of our kleshas, when we try and get rid of them. And that's what they do. If you make them into an enemy, you solidify them. They give them substance. And finally, he accepts her, which means she becomes his object of simple accepting awareness. And at that point, she transforms into a goddess, the goddess Saringma, and she helps him on his path. He becomes one of his followers. Okay? So, the next one, 7, is without ornament, which means you're not ready to be a teacher, because while you've accomplished some things personally, you don't manifest as a highly accomplished person to the rest of the world yet. And then the next stage is you're going deeper and deeper into this, is what's called adorned. And then you do become a teacher with confidence and flair He says, and flare. And your individual discipline is developed. Having already overcome the veil of neurosis and the veil of karmic obligations, you have achieved power over the world. That's quite a stage. The ninth stage is with omission. You obtain freedom from rebirth in the 6 realms. These are called the realms of passion, the karma dhatu. It's one of the 3 worlds of samsara. And you achieve freedom from rebirth because you have overcome the kleshas to such a degree. See, the kleshas are what create these worlds. If you have pride, you become a god. You know, if you're experiencing hatred, you're plunged into the hell realm. But overcoming these emotions through awareness, one achieves freedom from the 6 realms. And that's a stage of the Hinayana path. But you haven't transcended the other 2 of the 3 samsaric realms. These are the realms of meditative states, the realms of the gods of pure form and the formless gods. And these are sort of trance states that one can achieve. And those come with the development of the next stage, which is without omission. And here, you transcend theism altogether. You see, theism is feeling that there is something to be achieved. There's something that you need to be able to equal or meld with or grasp or clutch in some way. Something out there opposite you. Some better state. It could be nirvana. It could be enlightenment. And then you have turned it into a theistic object because it's out there. It's a mountain to climb. But in this stage, you've overcome theism. He says, here all the neuroses and habitual patterns are transcended, but you are still not a bodhisattva. So you are becoming free of habitual patterns and your neurotic thoughts. The number 11 is especially supreme. And he says at this level you have transcended both samsara and nirvana. And Rinpoche expresses his suspicion that this was inserted by Mahayanists. It doesn't sound Hinayana. See, Hinayana is all about cessation, Nirodha, and suddenly we have transcendence in here. He says, Number 12 is beyond calculation. This is the last one. Whatever needed to be overcome has been overcome. We attain the ultimate state of peace, relaxation, and openness, in which we are no longer hassled by the samsaric world. And it's characterized by a number of faculties. Renunciation. You don't have to try to renounce anything. You're already there, just by being present. See, what's the opposite of renunciation is obsessing over what you don't have or want. Like if you are attached to wealth and you're thinking about it and you're devoting your life to it and you're firmly bound by the karmic chain of that activity. Renunciation here is just coming present. And when you come present, that chain is severed, the whole thing evaporates, you're just here. Another factor is complete purification. Everything is purified. Just means the same thing again. It's all about resting in the present moment. Worn out, you wear out subtle and obvious neurosis. It's passionless, which is the basic definition of Dharma. There's no desire or aggression to initiate further involvement in samsara, the samsaric world. There's complete peace, which is energetic because we are responsive to the world. Having given up our little private agendas, we're open and available to dance with anything that comes toward us or asks for our partnership. And finally, there's subsiding, which is giving up hope. I remember in Boulder seeing a bumper sticker on a car. It said, Now that I've given up hope, I feel so much better. And that's the point. That person understood this particular one here. He says, you are giving up altogether all the neuroses and problems of the previous 11 possibilities. You know, it's giving up hope for something, which really defines samsara. So finally, cessation means transcending the turmoil and problems of life and the neurosis that goes along with it. And then, this is a good one. It may be that the very fact of trying so hard is the way we got into trouble in the beginning. So we transcend cessation itself. You know, by transcend it means it doesn't become a goal that you're striving for. It's just really a matter of coming back to what is already here, again and again. He says, when we have abandoned any personal ego input, any personal bank account, we begin to achieve proper cessation. In the long run, this would be our best investment. But it appears to be a very bad business deal because we don't have any legal contact to protect ourselves. We're no longer existing. So I thought maybe we could just do it for 5 minutes. Practice cessation. So it's good to do it on the cushion, you know, bracket your day. I don't do that much, but it is good. So, with your eyes open and directed at the horizontal, just so you're sort of natural. Your gaze is natural, you're not swimming, you're not hyper-focused. Good posture helps. I don't know why, but it just does. From Rinpoche called it having good head and shoulders. I mean, when you sit like this instead of looking, it's what we used to call, in New York, in the years ago, the oy vey posture. So you sit upright, you know, and your awareness is just here, in the space, in the room. It encompasses anything and everything. It's wide, it's completely relaxed, effortless. It's just here. It knows, without you saying anything, that it's awake and aware. You can say something about it, like I'm doing it now, but that's just an add-on. It's unnecessary. Because when you're here, it's already known. So we'll just sit like this for a few minutes. Thoughts arise, it doesn't matter. You just see them. And they're transparent, you're still here. It's fine. They can come and go. It's not up to you.